All right, thank you. I would like to introduce our board members. With me tonight is Kathy Day, Madeline DeMaitonon. I'm Mike Rowley. Tasha Woods and Cindy Coe could not join us tonight. Our superintendent, Troy Turnow, is not available tonight as well, but we are joined by our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Jennifer Kuntz, and our Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Kim Snyder. Board first action item is our consent agenda. We had the opportunity to review these items individually and seek clarification from the district admin prior to our meeting. I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Kathy has moved that we accept the consent agenda, approve this consent agenda, and Madeline has seconded. Board, any discussion? All right. I'll call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any noes? All right. Consent agenda passes. Approved. All right, board, that takes us into administration. And first up is a teaching and learning update from Jen.
All right. So one item for the TNL update today, which is just an update on the dual language task force work that we did this year. So I linked there to a document that kind of was a summary of the year-long work that we did. And our purpose at the outset of this, when we started drafting this dual language task force, probably about this time last year, was to just explore a dual language program option and evaluate the capacity and sustainability of one in Ellensburg School District. I think it was around this time that Rob Darling came and talked to the board about dual language for an entire study session. And so this was a multi-stakeholder team that got together about monthly to look at dual language and really dig into, would this be possible in Ellensburg School District? The intended outcomes for the team was to just understand dual language, program models, plan and implement initial stakeholder listening sessions, and to familiarize with OSPI's dual language framework and identify steps for ESD to take in completing that framework. And I believe that we hit each outcome by the end of the year, though there's still definitely work to be done and conversations to be had. So feedback from the team. And again, I had linked to the document that has all the team members that were on the team, if you are interested in that. But I think high on everyone's mind was figuring out staffing. If we are going to have a dual language program, what is staffing? What would our staffing model look like? How do we get them in place? What are the implications on a larger scale for our staff that are currently here? Further dialogue with stakeholders, including more conversations with EEA, parents, community, et cetera, and plans to develop capacity. So what would the training look like? What would collaborating around this look like with current dual language systems? They wanted to look at options for teachers getting bilingual or ML endorsements for our current teachers. And I think loud and clear from the team that met around this was that they want to continue to move forward. That is important that we continue to take the steps necessary to see a dual language program in Ellensburg School District. So that was a summary of the feedback. And for some reason, it's not, there it goes. And so this just shows you kind of the outline of the major topics that we talked about at each of the sessions. And so the first two sessions were really around building shared knowledge around dual language. So the task force group was kind of across the board with their knowledge around dual language programs. Some of them had started a dual language program. Some of them had been a principal in a dual language school, and some knew almost nothing about dual language programs. So the first couple were just, let's make sure that we're all on the same page about what this means, using the same vocabulary, understanding all the implications. So we spent 2 full sessions doing that. And we had a consultant through this whole thing. We contracted with Dual Language Education of New Mexico, and she joined every one of our sessions. And so for those first couple of sessions, she really walked us through best practices and guiding principles around dual language programs, research behind dual language, and all of the support that for dual language that research shows. She talked about different program model options, scheduling considerations, et cetera. So we kind of built a strong foundation with that team on what is dual language, what are all the factors, what are all the things to consider. And then we had someone walking us through that from a third party. The next two sessions were really around developing a program mission, vision, and goals. So it might have felt a little bit premature given that we're not actually for sure implementing one, but the team really felt like if we're going to make recommendations and kind of consider what could this look like, we have to know what it is that we would be shooting for. So while this doesn't have to be, if we did move forward with dual language, the final mission, vision, goals around dual language, we did spend time talking about what's important to Ellensburg School District when we consider a dual language program. And this is what developed from that team, again, over two different sessions. We brainstormed and came up with some stuff the first time, and then we kind of went back to it again the second time and changed some things and came up with this. So we called it a promise statement. I think it was looking at strategic plan stuff that actually made me first hear that term that I really liked rather than vision, mission, and goals, like a promise statement. So what the team came up with was that Ellensburg School District empowers students in the dual language program too, and then bulleted some kind of highlights about what would be important to ensure that we're providing for students in our dual language program and in our school district in general. And so you'll see represented there bilingual, biliterate learners, and high academic achievement, and then also those cultural competency pieces. And the group felt like it was extremely important that be not just in a dual program where that is built, but that it becomes something that is shared outside of that school community or program community, and that it be shared with the larger community as well. And so that's what they wanted for students. And then the second part is Ellensburg School District models and supports. And then you'll see the list of bulleted items that again kind of reflect those same values. So those are sort of like the guiding principles or underlying core beliefs of this group, hoping that that would find their way into a final vision, mission, promise statement, whatever we call it, list of core values and goals for a dual program in Ellensburg. And then the final three sessions were spent on really looking at program models and determining what could work in Ellensburg School District. And it gets pretty complicated because there are so many different factors to a dual language program. So it took us, initially we had kind of hoped that we could move on to other things by the end of the year, but it ended up taking 3 full sessions to really dig into what does that look like and what's the possibility in Ellensburg. So this is what, when we looked at all the different program models, we kind of asked, what do we like about this model for each one? And what are we concerned about with this model? So we thought through each model, and then what specific challenges would we have to mitigate with that particular model? And when I say model, the things that we were looking at were things like how many schools would this be in? Elementary, we've got 4. So we'd have to determine, are we having it at all 4 schools? Are we having an option for it at all 4 schools? Is it just at 1? Is it going to be at 2? And then how many strands? So if we had it at just 1 school, would it just be 1 strand, meaning 1 class in kindergarten and 1 class in 1st grade, 1 class in 2nd grade? Or would it be 2 strands in 1 school so that there's 2 kindergarten classes that are dual and they move into 2 1st grade classrooms? Or if we had it in 2 different schools, would we have a strand in each of those schools, 2 strands in each of those? So we really looked at what our numbers are, what our numbers could support. And after 3 sessions talking about this, having the consultant walk us through the various things to consider, these were these were the results. So we really ended up focusing on those 5 different models, 1 strand at 1 school, 2 strands at 1 school, 3 strands at 1 school, 2 strands at 2 schools, which actually means like a strand in each. So 2 strands, but 1 in different schools. And then having 1 strand at all 4 schools so that every elementary school would have a dual program. So after looking at all of the things, looking at our numbers, considering what would work for Ellensburg School District, the group voted and they got to kind of say, we vote, they each got 2 votes and they could vote on just 1, put both their votes on 1, or they could split their votes. And this is how it fell out. So you can see that Model B was the preferred from this group, which actually could easily develop into Model C. Because then if you grow a 2 strands successfully, you could hypothetically build that into a strand in a school. And typically, or right now we have, for the most part, we have 3 sections per grade level in each of our 4 elementary schools. There's a couple of places where we only have 2, but right now it's fairly typical to have 3 strands or 3 different classes per grade level in a school. So looking at Model B, which was having 2 strands in 1 school, choosing 1 elementary school, some of the considerations that would have to be mitigated are things like transportation. So getting students to that 1 school, if that is where we are serving multilingual students and inviting them to attend to receive those services, we'd have to ensure that we can get students to that 1 school. Things like which school would it be at? Is there one that makes more sense for it to be at? Enrollment, remaining schools would have lower numbers if we're pulling out the multilingual students from those other schools so that they can receive service program, then we'd have to look at what that does for class sizes and things like that. School culture, if there's 3 sections per grade level and only 1 is monolingual, and we talked about that in all of the scenarios, where if there's 2 monolingual strands and 1 dual strand or the reverse, and what are the implications of that? And we really talked about the fact that any of these scenarios poses challenges that would have to be mitigated. So there's answers to all of it. It's just a matter of how easy are those answers and what has to be shuffled around to figure it out. And then secondary considerations, we also talked a great deal about one of the challenges with dual programs when you have only 2 strands. So you start with only like 40 students in kindergarten that are in a dual program. By the time they get to middle school, that's a fairly small cohort that are in a dual program. So it limits scheduling for those students in secondary classes. It makes it challenging to figure out which sections are we going to offer in secondary. And I think, for example, SELA is kind of going through a little bit that to figure out with smaller numbers, how do you make that make sense for students in secondary? So we looked at that too, and whether or not that would have to be considered. But again, ultimately, I think the message was very loud and clear that this team definitely wanted to move forward with dual programming. And then I just circled there at the bottom that at the beginning of the year, we thought that we would be able to analyze the fit of the dual language program within our strategic plan. So obviously we're going through a revamp of that, which is really exciting, but that is we didn't obviously get to that part. So that's definitely a next step for the dual language task force, and then kind of breaking out even more specifically what some of this would mean for budget and HR considerations and all of that. But that was the work that the team did this year. Any questions?
I have one kind of clarifying question. So the 2-strand Model B that you were saying would be like 2 classrooms in kindergarten, but then those would transition to 2 classrooms in 1st grade and 2nd grade and so on. What's the staffing like for something like that? Is it you have to hire somebody who is or they get certified at that So you hire in as kindergarten, but knowing that these kids are going into first grade, you're going to have to hire two new teachers for first grade level and then so on and so forth, or
Yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah, so there's no one right pathway to it, but staffing is probably the biggest consideration and the thing that would keep us from implementing more quickly than we otherwise could. Because it has to happen either through an increase in students, so we're hiring more teachers, or through attrition in our system. So we can only get those, we don't have control over how quickly we can get bilingual staff in place. And we've sort of been told that a good rule to go by is you don't want to launch the dual program until you have enough staff in place to ensure that it's going to run through at least third grade. If you do that, then by the time that cohort gets up to third grade, you're likely going to have been able to fill out fourth in the future and fifth in the future. But it's pretty risky if you launch it with, well, yay, we've got kindergarten teachers and hopefully we can get first grade teachers in place next year because they're going to be first graders next year. So having enough staff in place to feel somewhat confident that it's going to be a smooth transition up as that cohort rolls up is, I think, going to be important.
Do any schools do a looping or like a following kind of a model in the first few years?
Yeah, and there's also differences. I mean, any program's only as good as what actually happens in the classroom. But the research kind of supports either an 80-20 or a 90-10 split, which means in kindergarten, it's best if they have either 80% or 90% of their day in Spanish, and then slowly phasing into 50-50, which is a true dual language model by third grade. So, however, if you start in kindergarten at 50-50, then you can job share. And so you could have one bilingual staff in a strand who either does both kindergarten classrooms, or they could do kinder and first and share with a monolingual English teacher, or just the English, someone who teaches the English portion for the other part. And that's kind of like a looping as well, because they'd be with them for 2 years. But yeah, there are people that loop, particularly in the early stages of implementation, because the downside is that first cohort is always getting the new teacher new to the program. So that's been a suggestion that we heard too, is to keep a teacher with a cohort and put the newer one with the incoming cohort.
Do we currently have a number of staff that have the ML endorsement?
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't say a number. We do have a fair number of people that have ML endorsement, but not bilingual. So they can teach what used to be called English as a second language. They can teach the language acquisition, but they're not bilingual. And so that we don't have a lot of bilingual endorsed staff. However, OSPI just came out with a grant opportunity that will pay for teachers to get that endorsement. And so we reached out to our staff to see who's interested in that. And we already have, I think it's around a dozen people who are likely going to be starting a program to get ML endorsed who aren't already. So.
I just have one more question. So obviously the committee hasn't come up with a proposal for the board and the district and things like that. Are you guys planning on to continue this fall, and is it going to be the same committee, or do you think you bring in new people, fresh eyes and things like that to keep moving forward? And then
Yeah, well, so I think like I said, the next step is definitely kind of in figuring out how this fits into the larger strategic plan and ensuring that this is going to be something that the district wants to support and emphasize over the next however many years. But then also staffing being the biggest issue, just really working through what would that staffing plan look like and getting moving on that, so that every time we have an opportunity to get staff in place, we are getting staff in place so we can start. I mean, at this point, it's going to be a couple of years out before that's at the earliest that we can feel confident with that. So getting moving on that. And then once we're really moving, we'll apply for the grant money for implementation. And that requires that we form an official oversight group essentially. And I've told the task force that if any of them want to serve on that, they can. If they're highly interested in the work and want to be part of the oversight committee that sort of analyzes the implementation and gives feedback on how well it's going, what's going well, what's not going well. But so it could be the same people, it could be, but it will likely also include additional people.
I have one last question. So for the Model C, if we were to do that, that would mean that the whole program at the whole school would be a dual language
Yeah.
school.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right. Thank you very much, Jen. All right, takes us to a superintendent update. Do you have one of those for us, Jen? Stand in. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right, board, that takes us next into business. First up is Board Resolution 290624, approval of commissioning report for Lincoln renovation. And we have Randy here with us.
There he goes. And I'm sure you guys have memorized the whole 480 pages of that report. This is the same report that we gave you guys earlier in the preliminary report. We just made some final updates on that. Just to let everybody know that all the final commissioning is actually done. We have a few warranty issues that we're dealing with some boiler pumps, one controller for an exhaust fan. We've got a little bit of an asphalt issue out on the playground where we had some undermining going on. But this is the last phase of closing out our Lincoln project so that we can finalize our reports to OSPI. And if you have any questions, I think I can answer most of them.
Randy, my only question is for the difference between the two items that are on the business report. One is the approval of the commissioning report and the other one is the final acceptance of construction.
Right. So
difference?
the first one is that you're accepting the actual commission, that the building has been commissioned and that you accept it. You know, this is your acceptance of that report, that everything is running as it should be. The second one is the actual approval of the acceptance of the completion, that the school is now completed with the commissioning.
Thank you. Board, any questions for Randy? All right, so first up is Board Resolution 290624. This is an action item.
I move that we approve the commissioning report for the Lincoln renovation project.
Second.
Madeline has moved that we accept the commissioning report for Lincoln renovation, and Kathy has seconded. Board, any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Approval of commissioning, the commissioning report for Lincoln has passed. All right, board, next up is Board Resolution 280624, final acceptance of the construction completion of Lincoln. And this is an action item as well.
I move that we approve Board Resolution 280624.
A second.
Madeline has moved that we accept the Board Resolution 280624, acceptance of construction completion of Lincoln, and Kathy has seconded. Board, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. And board resolution 280624 has passed. All right, next up is meal pricing for 2024 through 2025. Thank you, Randy. After you guys get a chance to look at that. Again, this is an action item. Accepting the meal pricing for 2024, 2025.
Right. I move that we accept the meal pricing for the 2024-2025 school year.
I'll go ahead and second.
All right, Kathy has moved that we accept the meal pricing for 2024, 2025 school year. Madeline has seconded. Board, any discussion?
I was just wondering, I know that the price increase, especially for middle school, it's almost 13% increase. It is significant. And so I was hoping that we could just get a little bit more information as far as why such a large increase and why weren't the middle school and high school already linked as far as the pricing goes? Just because it's such a large increase.
I'm not sure on all this, but I'm going to kind of give my think on this. I think she was looking at this because they actually serve almost the same meal at both schools and the portion sizes at both schools. And so she was just trying to get the pricing closer together because of that, because she is providing the same type of meals in middle school. I don't know that, but I can get that for you.
Same for.
For
For
23,
22.
24. I was just wondering
Oh.
what because it says the 385 is the average price requirement. I was wondering what that was, what kind of increase that was from prior. Yes.
Yeah, I'll make sure to reach out to her and have her send that to you.
I think how to say this. Correct, yeah. I'm just. All right. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Okay, that is acceptance of the meal pricing for 2024, 2025. And then, yes, if we can have just a little more information from Alexandra, that'd be great. And she can just email the board or something, so.
I have one quick question too. When do parents find out about this? Because it is kind of significant if you're not already getting it subsidized.
Right, I assume that she would be sending it out on Parent Square, probably getting closer to the school year, maybe in August, but I'll reach out to her to see what that is too. And if you guys aren't feeling comfortable with that, we can always postpone it to the next. We probably don't have to
Been voted on.
approve, that's true.
So
Yeah,
it was approved.
okay.
We can also put in our materials coming for us. We'll put it in all of our everywhere, great.
Okay,
All of our everywhere.
thank you, Leslie. All right, next up is proposed board calendar for the 2024, 2025 year. Leslie, you're not allowed to be gone.
Well.
I'm just kidding.
I turned it off. I'm sorry. Do we have an ongoing schedule for just the agenda setting? Or is that something that would kind of go along to supplement this?
I haven't said it yet.
Okay.
But if you guys have, you know, it's every Thursday, so there's the third Thursday of the month, you're not available. I mean, that, I said, schedule.
Okay.
I think that our agenda settings are a little more fluid than this is, and so, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So this is an action item board.
I move that we approve the proposed board calendar for 2024, 2025.
I second.
Kathy has moved that we accept the proposed board calendar for 2024, 2025. Madeline has seconded. Any discussion, board? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Proposed board calendar has passed. All right, next up under business is our enrollment report.
You guys will see that there, but you'll see in June, we were down about a little over 8 FTE, but that we still averaged at the end of the year fairly close to what was projected for the year.
Is this, do we take the average as far as your projected student enrollment for next year, or do you take the ending enrollment?
When I'm doing budget, I mean, when I'm 24, 25, we kind of look at all of it. We look at the past 3 years, what that's been looking like, you know, and I've really been budgeting kind of a flat enrollment just because we haven't grown in the last few years. So it's still kind of that fluctuating. I think we're, you know, like we said, we're right at where we projected last year. So 24, 25 is going to look very similar to that.
Any questions about enrollment report? All right, thank you. All right, that takes us on to our financial update, and Kim.
Well, hopefully tonight I'll read the right numbers. So tonight I'll be going over the financial status of the district as of May 2024. We are now 9 months into the fiscal year. That's as of May, and the general fund is on target with 74.47% of budget and revenue and 69.87% of budget expenditures. The fund balance is sitting at 15.43%. For the month of May, the district spent $1.95 million for certificated employee salaries for a total of $17.5 million for the year, $700,000 for classified employee salaries for a total of $6.3 million for the year, $972,000 for benefits for a total of $8.8 million for the year, $322,000 for supplies for a total of $2.5 million for the year, $395,000 on professional services for a total of $4.9 million for the year, $6,734 on travel for a total of $40,000 for the year, and we spent $0 in capital items in the month of May for a total of $54,000 for the year. There were no discrepancies between Kittitas County Treasurer's report and the district trial balance. The capital project fund is showing 64.95% of revenue has been received and 11.53% of expenditures have been reported. The fund balance comes in at $3.17 million. There is no discrepancy between Kittitas County Treasurer and the trial balance. The debt service fund has received 96.52% of revenue and 70.35% of expenditures have been reported. The fund balance comes in at $4.7 million. The next interest payment was actually made on June 1st. There was no discrepancies between Kittitas County Treasurers and the trial balance. The ASB fund has received 57.95% of revenues and 36.64% of expenditures have been reported. The fund balance comes in at 597,000. There is a discrepancy between Kittitas County Treasurer and the district trial balance, and this is due to a void when we voided it in our system, but they have not voided it in their system. So it's just a timing issue, and that should clear out in June this month. Private purpose fund, since the private purpose trust fund is not a fiduciary fund, there is not a budget status report. The fund balance sits at approximately 33,456. There was no discrepancies between Kittitas County Treasurer and the trial balance. Transportation Vehicle Fund, this revenue for this fund came in at 5.63% and expenditures are at 45.89%. The fund balance is 596,000. We will be receiving the depreciation payment in August. So you'll see revenue actually go up then. We have purchased 3 buses this year. There was no discrepancy between Kittitas County Treasurer and the trial balance. I would like to remind everyone that this report is presented with the information I have currently and is subject to change as we continue through the year. I'd also like to remind everyone that revenue sources are used in their current funds for authorized expenditures and can't usually be transferred to be used in different funds unless authorized within the adopted budget and within the accounting laws. Do you have any questions?
I have a question about sort of the fund balance in general. I know Madeline had asked about it a few meetings ago because we've got, what, 8% in our policy? And it seems like it's been consistently quite a bit higher than that. And I guess I'm just wondering, do we have a plan to make sure that we get more money out into classrooms? I know we want to be careful, and it does seem like we've got a large cushion, and I'm just interested in understanding more about what that's looking like down the road.
Right. And I think that in June, you'll see that go down. June is a big expenditure month. And so you'll see in payroll and stuff, some employees like to hold on to their timesheets until June for some money. So you'll see that we'll have some more bigger expenditures, but not as much revenue coming in. So you'll see that going down some. We definitely just doing the preliminary budget. We're at 8.26 is what we're looking at. It's always, of course, a plan. So we never know. And it just depends. And this year, the legislature actually gave us extra, some more funding during the year that we weren't expecting. So that's been great. We definitely have plans for sure that we do. And we look at that as we look at the budget process for the next year.
Thank you. And I know we had also talked about having on the website some frequently asked questions, or a little bit more education around the actual budget. Because I was looking at it's page 10 on the slide where we look at the trend of the fund balance, and it does seem like it stays quite a bit higher. And so just, looking at what that might mean or what our strategy is behind that, and just getting a little better understanding, because I understand the line that we've got to be very careful. Our primary responsibility is to, teach the children, but be fiscally sound while we're doing it. But also I feel like we also have a responsibility to take the money that taxpayers are gifting us and putting it out there if we possibly can. As far as we can. So those are just some discussions that I think would be good to have, that more of the public can be engaged in and understanding. I think sometimes the fund balance is this big nebulous idea, and it kind of works. I mean, if you understand it, you do understand why it goes up and down, but when you look at the trends, you can kind of see where it ends up sitting. And that might be something we want to devote a little bit of attention to, and, education for the community as well.
Yeah, and my plan is to get something up on on our website as soon as I have some time. It's been kind of a little busy spring with budget and negotiations of 2 big contracts. So just trying to work through that, but that's my plan for this summer. Hopefully that I'll be able to get that done.
I think what I was asking about before was because I think in the policy, it has like a aspirational 8%, but it's never been approved or changed. And so I think it's still technically 5%. And so that might be something to kind of address at the same time.
Any other questions for Kim? All right, thank you very much, Kim. We have no policies tonight. Takes us to board chair report. I do not have a report tonight. Takes us to public comment, which there's one person on Zoom. Oh, there it is. So Leslie, if you want to. Okay, perfect. So we'll just give it a second to see if Shayna wants to comment. If you do, please sign up in the chat box. All right, thank you. Go ahead and close public comment for the night. Board, that takes us into new business. Do we have any new business? No, but okay.
We have no new business, but we are starting our farmers market conversations on Saturday. Cindy and I will be there.
Awesome.
So something
Very
to
good.
make sure people know.
Okay. So yes, so Cindy and Madeline, Kathy and Cindy will be at this weekend's farmers market to meet with the public and be out there for interactions and conversations. So thank you for starting that. All right, that takes us into meeting closing. Do we have an executive session tonight? Okay. Next up is board calendar. The only thing I'll just say is that we only have one meeting next month. It's on the 17th. Leslie will not be here, but Patrick will be. So thank you, Patrick. If for whatever reason something comes up, just email us and we'll figure that out. I don't think there's anything else for board calendar. Do you guys have anything? Okay. Clarification and next steps. Anything on that? Okay. Leslie, signing of documents?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, that takes us to adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Kathy moves that we adjourn and Madeline seconds. Thank you all. We are adjourned. Have a great night.